Hello, everyone. I see cat number one behind me here. Welcome to Facebook Friday. Maureen Walbioff, Practical Wisdom for Nonprofit Accidental Techies, and Beans. So today you're going to get our professional take on something that has to do with the world of technology and the nonprofit teams who have to manage them. Manage all those products, manage that strategy, manage actually getting a return on your investment. It's Friday I forget what day it is, 24th, and it's just about Memorial Weekend. I live in a vacation land. I live on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, and I could feel the traffic starting to build from Boston. It's supposed to be a really nice weekend, and it's kind of nice to live in a place where people go on vacation because everybody's having a good time. Either that or they're having a very bad time. And that leads me to our topic today, which is all about what you have to do at the end of a nonprofit technology project to make sure that you've got your money's worth, to make sure that anything that might make your life easier the next time around is talked about and shared. And that's the project debrief meeting. You know, you start with a project team and you've got this vision and lots of assumptions and maybe some magical thinking about how that project is going to go. And then things happen, timelines get blown and the budget gets blown and you zig and zag and finally get to the end. Maybe you left a man behind, you know. It can be rough, it can be smooth, but at the end of those nonprofit technology projects, most people just want to take a powder. They want to rinse this from their brains and move on with their lives, not do a lot of navel gazing, mostly like, whew, we got out of there by the skin of our teeth, or it was really successful, but in most cases, people just continue to march forward. And you're missing an opportunity there with that project debrief meeting. And it doesn't need to be a big production, but it is really, really necessary and really, really helpful. And the project debrief meeting is really used not only for big projects, like a big website redesign project or moving to a new CRM, you know, those definitely should have debrief meetings. But even small projects like making your donation form responsive should have just a moment where people can come together and talk about what worked and what didn't work for them and some lessons learned. And if your donation form is not responsive, that should absolutely be your very next nonprofit technology project, because it's got to be able to be used on a phone. That's my little pitch for responsive donation forms. If you don't have them, make sure you get them before end of year fundraising by any means necessary. The project debrief meeting is also called by a couple of other names. That's the name I use for it, but I've heard it referred to as a project recap, post-project huddle, project autopsy, where we're really like looking down on the project from above and analyzing, you know, what happened. No matter what you call it, it's worth 90 minutes of your time, and that's really all it's going to take. Before everybody scatters, you want to make space for people to share their observations. And the goal of these meetings is really for everyone to come and kind of openly share without fear of retribution or argument or defensiveness, sort of what their project experience actually was. Everybody's going to have a different one. What was a really high point for person A might have been the darkest of days for person B. So it's a time for everybody to kind of come to a shared understanding. Don't do these meetings while the project is still going on. There's just too much heat and pace and tension for people to be able to step out of that execution space and into an observation analysis space. You may need to do interventions and have little meetings with different people on the team during a project, but it's not the same as a debrief. I just want to clear up any confusion you might have, because you may indeed be sharing observations and giving feedback along the way. This is a little bit different because it's at the bitter end. So you want to book a meeting for 90 minutes. I'm going to take a drink. No more than 90 minutes. And you want to prep people ahead of time by sending them some debrief questions. We're going to go into some suggestions for those debrief questions. And I do have a worksheet for you. And I'll put the link to the worksheet in the comments when the video is over. Hi, Kathy. It's great to see you here. We're talking about project debrief meetings and why you need to have them. So 60 to 90 minutes. 90 minutes is good. If you've got, more than 4 people, I'd say go to 90 minutes. And you want to send those debrief questions ahead of time and let them know that they should prepare their own answers to those questions and be ready to share them at the meeting. So that way it's not the first time they're seeing some of these questions. You're not springing it on them. You may want to tap someone else to facilitate the meeting. You may not be able to run the meeting and make sure people are listening and manage the time and take notes and be able to really fully participate. So if you've got someone inside your organization who's a good facilitator, a good note taker, can sort of guide a conversation well, even if they're not part of your project team, you might want to ask them to come and be the guest facilitator, so that you can really sit there, share your own experiences if you were the project manager, and really be able to hear what other people are saying. So sometimes the job of facilitator and participant can be a little tricky unless you've had a lot of training and practice to do that. You want to document the conversation and share the notes around. It's part of open communication. It's part of being transparent. You or someone else needs to document the notes, the agreements, kind of what the conversation was like, and send them around to everybody so they all know, this is when the project actually ended. Was right here when we all were on the same page about what happened and what to do, either to replicate what happened if it went well, or to avoid the same situation the next time around. This could be a little bit of a hard meeting. If people's emotions are up on the surface, they may go right back to that darkest day and kind of relive it for a second. Normally people don't go to pieces on these meetings, but you might want to be prepared for folks to be a little guarded, especially if you've never done anything like this before. And the best way to get everybody to sort of be ready to open up, in my opinion, is by setting ground rules right at the beginning of the meeting. So everybody comes in, they've got their questions and their answers, they're ready to go. You have a note taker and a facilitator, and the first thing you're going to do is set some ground rules, creating that safe space for people to feel like they can open up, without getting bashed or people getting defensive. I start with 2 ground rules in every meeting that I facilitate. The first one is listen to understand rather than respond, because it's a little bit different of a listening stance. And then the second is there are no stupid questions. So people can feel free to ask whatever they want. At that point, a good opener is to get each person in the debrief meeting to share a ground rule. Kathy's experienced that before, yeah. So Nate submits a ground rule and Cheryl says a ground rule, and you go around and somebody writes them down, and those are your agreements for how you're going to behave in the meeting. And it can be a very quick way to get everybody on the same page and feeling safe. So what questions should you ask? There goes Beanie again. What questions should you ask in this debrief meeting? Try to keep it to a tight 4, 5 if you absolutely have to, because you want to make sure that you open up enough room for conversations and it's not just report out, report out, report out. So here are some examples to pick from. I've got some different examples in the worksheet. So you'll have a whole host of them, and you can also do a search just for project debrief meetings, project recap questions, and come up with a list that makes sense for your situation. Here's some thoughts though. The first one is, what do you think went well? Let's start with the good stuff. We're going to get to the rotten stuff sooner rather than later. So what went well? What was a high point for you in this project? Question one. And then what didn't go so well? What was bumpy? What was rough? What was weird? You know, whatever. Sometimes people leave in the middle of a project, and that certainly can be just one of those situations that the project team inherits and has to move on with. Third suggestion for a question is, what was your top lesson learned? Whether that's an aha moment, or I'm never going to do it like that again, or I'm always going to do it like that again. Asking that open-ended question about lessons learned really lets you experience or share the experience of a certain person on the team, what was going on for them, and that maybe had an effect on the rest of the project team. Did you have what you needed to do a good job? Imagine that. Giving someone the resources and the time and the support and the training that they need to actually do a good job in a nonprofit technology project. If someone needed something and didn't ask for it, this is a good time for them to say, by the way, it would have been really helpful if this other responsibility got taken off my plate, because it was very challenging to do both. I can imagine many of you will hear something like that in the debrief meeting that you do, if you haven't already. Who was the biggest help to you? This is a moment, a little bonding moment. It may be a little bit too left brainy, maybe, but maybe it's right brain. Kathy, do you know if it's left brain is the emotions and right brain is the logic? I want to say it might be the other way around. If you know, Scott, do you know left brain, right brain, which is sort of the emotion versus the logic? So asking people to share who the biggest help to them was during that project is super wonderful, because I may say, hey, I really leaned on Scott. If Scott wasn't there for me to talk to, I don't know what I would have done. And I actually have said that about Scott before in some projects. So it's a good time to really understand who was working together, who helped each other. Kathy says right brain is emotion. So that was a right brain question. Thanks, Kathy. I knew one of you would know. Another suggested question for the debrief meeting is, what are you proud of our finished deliverables? If you were building a new website and the website went live, is each person feeling good about the end result? Yeah, maybe it took a little longer, but I loved our new website because XYZ. So that's a good question to sort of gauge. Did we kind of do the project, but not completely? Did it change so much from our original plan and vision that it really wasn't the same project by the time we finished it? And then finally, really importantly, and obviously, what could we do better next time? This is where you may identify some places in your process, whether it's how you communicated, or the approval process for things, or the testing process. Some things about how the work got done may be able to be improved. In fact, almost always there are improvements that can be made. So asking people what we could do better next time, and then being clear about whether you can apply that to your next project or not is good. So you're going to ask questions like that. Each person is going to answer. Your facilitator is going to tease out anything. You may go down a little bit of a rabbit hole on a detail or on a phase of a project, or on an idea. And that's okay. Just make sure it's all documented. It's really, really useful, not just when projects go rough or when they're bad or they're the project from hell nobody wants to talk about ever again. We got out. That's all you need to know, is it happened and I got out of it. But when the project goes smoothly, it's super important to do these debrief meetings, because there are going to be things you want to replicate. Let's say communication was super smooth and everybody knew what was going on. You absolutely want to replicate that in the next project that you do. no question, at least an aspect of it. So these debrief meetings can help you not only like look at the yuck and maybe figure out how you could avoid that yuck the next time, but lift up the stuff that went really great and make it part of your normal practices. Super, super useful to do that. A pro tip for you when you get into the habit of doing these meetings is don't just file those notes away because you're not going to remember what the ahas were or what you decided you're going to try differently next time. The next project that shows up at your doorstep, do yourself a favor and go back to those notes from the last project, give them a scan, and figure out how you can operationalize either doing more of what worked or less of what didn't work. Okay, so again, I'm going to put a link to the free debrief worksheet in the comments when this video is over. Next week, May 31st, very last day of May, we'll be talking about 5 things that you can do easily to optimize your website's homepage for online fundraising. I don't care if your site is in Squarespace or WordPress or Wix or Drupal or you don't know where it actually is. This is more about tactics and strategy. Summertime is here, and so it's a really great time to make some changes to things like your homepage and test to see if they're getting you more gifts, if they're getting you more members, if you're getting higher donations, certain things are being clicked and they weren't before you tested, so that you can start getting things into shape for end of year fundraising, because that is like less than 6 months away now, friends. So we might as well start thinking about it, get a little smart, get a little ahead of the game. So thank you all so much for joining. Next week, homepage donation optimization, and we are going to have the link to the worksheet so that you can run your own debrief meetings. If you do debrief meetings, or if you try this, I'd love for you to either send me an email, maureen@meetmaureen.com, or put comments in or send me a message on Facebook so that we can continue the dialogue with some real life scenarios, okay? So thanks as always for joining me. Have a wonderful long weekend, and I will catch you next Friday. Thanks, everybody. Bye.